Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. It's great to have you on the channel. If you're a returning listener, we're really glad you came back. If you're a new listener, we're really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. So, our podcast is for people that want to learn something new or make themselves a little bit better every day. And we are super excited today to bring you yet another high quality, high caliber guest for you to listen to talk about the challenges that they've overcome in life, to talk about the successes that they've experienced, to talk about what they've learned when things have gone wrong, and to really kind of just meet and be exposed to different people who have had success in different areas of the world. And so our guest today is Brian Esposito. Brian is the founder and CEO of Esposito Intellectual Enterprises. And that is a holding company that has a very diverse group of holdings. Brian's been building that for over 20 years. Things such as tokenization and crypto. There is like companies that make alcohol. There's a beauty company in there. So it's a very wide and diverse group of companies. Brian's a super interesting guy. We're very excited to have him on the show. And so without further ado, let's welcome Brian in. So, Brian, welcome to Salty Ginger Talk. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It is, listen, I've been looking forward to this since our last conversation, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. We had, so for listeners, Brian and I had a great intro conversation. He was kind enough to accept our request to come on. And as you're going to hear, he's a super interesting guy. So, if you look at his resume, he is involved in all sorts of different businesses through his holding company, Esposito Intellectual Enterprises, and wide ranging. So, technology and things as visceral as spirits and baseball gloves. So, super interesting path that he has taken. Want him to talk about his successes as well. But one of the things, as you guys know on our podcast, we focus on is how do you learn from trial and error? And we try to avoid the word failure, and we try to think of it as data or feedback instead of failure. But Brian and I talked about this a little bit, and he followed a similar path to us in that he was a very dedicated baseball guy. And you've heard me preach the fundamentals that you learn from that sport that you can apply in life, and we'll talk about that as well. So, if you wouldn't mind, Brian, just very briefly, kind of fill the listeners in on your path from wherever you choose to start to current, and then we can jump into some
All right,
topics.
we'll start from the womb because I was working on getting out of there, so I've been working since I can imagine. So 24 plus years as an entrepreneur, building, starting, acquiring companies. There's two verticals of my life. There's Esposito Intellectual Enterprises, and that's what you've mentioned. I've been building that since a teenager. So that company or that holding company has evolved into over 115 different entities now, reach of over 200 joint ventures around the world, and proudly operating in over 25 different industries. So it's this machine that just keeps evolving, and new companies and partnerships come into it. It's humbling what it's turned out to be, because I've been through every life lesson and professional lesson you can think of to try and get me to fail, to give up, and it's just every obstacle you think of. And I always said, as long as I have my health, these things are fixable. There's always a solution, but sometimes health can throw a wrench into that. So very grateful for what I've been through. Through that journey, I became very focused on tokenizations over the last 10 plus years, is understanding where the future of things like crypto, security tokens, NFTs, digital assets, all these different buzzwords, and how do I apply them into my business model. And through understanding where we're going, another opportunity came up in August of 2023 for me to take over a public company known as Diamond Lake Minerals. So the symbol, and that's DLMI. And what we're doing is building the old school GE structure conglomerate, parent umbrella company there, all these different industry agnostic companies or assets or projects that we want to have under the umbrella, and including tokenization into those business models. So I won't get too much in the weeds, but how I see tokenization is the ability for anybody around the world to be able to buy into something that never had a chance to buy into. So for the first time ever, the one percenters are being challenged by the 99 percenters for them to be able to participate in a great product, a great company, a great public company, or a great asset. So a whole different world is evolving here now that you have democratization of people to actually buy into something they never had a chance to buy into. So that's been my journey. That's I will work till I'm dead. I'm a worker. That's my love. That's my hobby. That's my joy. So that's what I'm here to do.
Love it. That's that's great stuff. So you had talked about health there. I read in one of your interviews previously that you were in a pretty serious car accident early in your life, and that really kind of changed some thoughts in your head after surviving that. If it's not too personal, do you mind talking a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I wasn't at fault, so I'll talk about it. So a drunk driver hit me head on in Nashville, Tennessee, February of 2016. At that time, my little mini empire I thought was amazing. It was rocking to my view, my lens. At the time, I think there's about 30 or so companies within the holding company or the ecosystem. And this woman disrupted and changed everything. So I often say I'll gladly take the hit because she could have killed somebody. So I'll take that hit again and again because I'm still here. Secondly, after that accident, it was very post-concussion issues. My brain works very fast. I'm the glue to everything that I was building at that time. So when you take me out of the equation, or you take the engine out of the car, it's just a pretty looking car. It doesn't do anything. So everything fell apart. So within that year, lost everything, millions in debt, and my own personal leverage debt and assets and bills and vendors. It just accumulated to a mess. But I didn't file for bankruptcy. Work with everybody I could possibly work with and just say, bear with me. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to turn this thing around. And ultimately, what I'm grateful for is my model was completely wrong. The people that were around me were completely wrong. All my doing. I don't blame anybody but myself. And I needed that moment to completely throw me off my path, destroy everything, so I could rebuild with a much smarter and stronger foundation. And more importantly, with the right inner circle of people and professionals that are not only good friends, but allies in the trenches with you. Because the previous pack that I did a lot of things for, as soon as they realized the cow had no more milk, which me being the cow and the milk being money, they just disappeared, which was very disheartening. And part of an entrepreneurial's or a human being's journey, like, to be disappointed by people, even though you do things for them or you take risks for them, and when they don't return the favor, it can be very bitter. You can get very jaded. So I was very cognizant. Well, I can't go to the dark side and get mad and angry. I have a mess to clean up. So if I was mad and angry and hated the world and a mess to clean up, I knew that was a recipe for a disaster. So I tricked my brain the best that I could to be happy for that moment, be grateful for that moment, find little blessings here and there, and then figured out a way to rebuild with a much better and smarter model, which is where we are today.
Wow, that's such powerful. I just want to highlight at least one thing you said there. There was lots of things to highlight, but um, you heard Brian say, "Hey, I'm the one that set it up. I take responsibility for how it is." We talk about that a lot on our podcast, that we are responsible for how our lives go, and the people we surround ourselves with, we generally become the sum of the five people we spend the most time with. So if we're spending time with people that don't have aspirations, that aren't trying to improve themselves every day, that aren't trying to make the world a better place, you're going to sink to that same level of the people you surround yourself with. Similarly, you're going to rise to the level of the people you surround yourself with if you make different choices. So, when we were doing the research on Brian before he came on the podcast, he talked about it here 24 years of building his company to where it's at now. And you just heard him talk about some pretty significant bumps in the road, pun not intended with the car accident. But, um, how did you change? Because it looks like everything you do are joint ventures. So you rarely start something up just on your own. You partner with people. How
Oh, I
did you
start a lot.
change?
Yeah, no,
Sorry, go ahead.
I start a lot of things on my own. But now
Oh,
it's
my,
very
my
it's
fault.
no, no, it's okay. It's very de-risked though. I'm also not a bragger or boaster. I don't say, "Hey, look, I just started this. Look at me." I always look at it as a team, and this goes back to, I think, our baseball days. Like, it wasn't Mickey Mantle or Babe Ruth. It was the Yankees. It was a team that made these things happen. So, and maybe that's the perception, and I'm glad that you even said that, because that's probably either consciously or subconsciously, that's the point. It's not me saying, "Look what I built." It's, "Look what we've built." So when I want to come up with something or bring something to market, here it is, but it's more importantly, here it is, and here's who we partnered with to make it hopefully on a successful path. So that's probably what you're seeing and how you're analyzing what we do. But it's the announcement of going into market with something and with a great partner or strategic or partners.
Sure, love it. So that's those are great comments. How do you generate your ideas, like where you spend your time? It looks like you look for holes in the market or problems that you can solve. That's just my take from what I looked at. Look, correct me if I'm wrong, but how do you approach that?
Yeah, it's my mind works a lot different than most, which I think is a blessing and a curse. So I don't know how successful, sustainable CEOs or leaders um, really ultimately succeed if they're operating in their 100th floor office looking over Manhattan. Then they go down into their chauffeured car, and then they go to the country club for dinner, and then they go back home. I'm not that guy. I am out in the world and I'm analyzing and I'm looking, and there's always that fill a need, find the need, fill a need. It's in my DNA. But also, it's understanding what the markets are doing and understanding, well, there is a need for this, and I've accumulated over 2 decades the right people, the right access, the right resources, the right strategy to bring something to fill that need. That's only one part of it. The other part is understanding, is it the right time for the market? Are you too soon? And if you're too soon, that's okay, but do you have the resources to sustain it and to keep it viable until the timing catches up? If it's not the right time because people are behind on their car payments and their mortgages and the price of eggs is through the roof and people don't have extra cash to be able to buy something or use a new service or enjoy a new piece of IP, you only know this if you're out in the world and you understand what the world economy and the world economics are looking like. You don't know this by relying on news media or the stock market or what other people may be telling you. You need to be out in the trenches and understanding what's going on. And you mentioned to me, I don't know if it's public knowledge, but the grocery stuff that you're working on. So you know firsthand what's going on in your local market, right? You understand if people can afford. Do you want to bring in a new higher end XYZ product if you know that your consumers can't afford it? Now that's money that you could have spent elsewhere on something. That's a loss that you're going to have to take. That's you're going to have waste you need to throw out, and then maybe that adds up where now you got to tell somebody they can't work a full day because of an improper buying of your local community and what it can absorb. So this is how you know what to build, and this is how you know who to work with. I need to work with like-minded people that see the world the way that I see it because I don't have time to try and educate somebody to see things my way. If I understand people are hurting, if I understand the world is on the brink, what I believe of a major correction, well, this would be a time where what does the world need? What do we have in our arsenal that we can provide value to people where it's priced right, it doesn't hurt either side of the table, and what can we provide that brings, in my view, I want to bring joy to people. I want to bring excitement. I want to bring something to get their mind off of what they're experiencing, and it's right now everybody's freaked out over tariffs. I think 90% of people don't even really know what a tariff is, but they go everywhere they go. It's tariff, it's tariff, it's tariff. That's noise, right? That's more fear. That's the terrorists of 9/11 that evolved into the global recession into 2009. Then it went into an invisible disease we were afraid of, and now it's another something we're afraid of. Like this is not fair for humanity to constantly live in fear. So where I am in my point in my life, what does the world need, and where can we provide a little bit more levity?
Love it. Yeah. And it's so funny because fear, I don't know, it's funny, but it's true. Fear is such an intrinsic motivator in most people. And our theory, and of course we think it's right because it's our our theory, but is this goes back to 100,000 years ago when we were all living in caves and we didn't want to get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger that walked in
Fight or
front.
flight.
And
Yeah.
right, exactly. So the fight or flight still exists. The people that tend to find a way through and tend to be successful are the ones that can recognize that thought process, acknowledge that thought process, and then develop coping mechanisms to get past that thought process and still take action, right?
Well said.
So, is that something that does that come naturally to you, or is that something you've had to teach yourself to do over time?
I think it's a combination of both. We also have, I mean, history repeats itself, and we talked about what business amnesia the other day. So many people my age, people older than me, there's just this common thread of whether it was a tactic that they blocked out for the psychology of it. There's historical problems that the world has gone through. There's historical problems where economies and markets have gone through. And in my lifetime, there was the dot com, the 2008, 2009. I think there was a blip in 2012, and then there was the 2019, 20 was supposed to be a natural correction, but then there was this COVID flood of money and cheap money that got pushed into the market that kind of changed a lot. It changed our natural progression of corrections, more natural corrections in economies or industries hitting a bubble and then resetting and then rebuilding. So I look at all that. I'm like, well, it would be so stupid for me to sit here, and I don't mean to insult anybody that sits there like that, and say, well, the stock market's just going to keep going up, and my account's just going to keep going up because that's what's going to happen. I would love to live in your world if that's what you think. And maybe ignorance truly is bliss, but there is enough history that says, no, that's not how it works. So prepare, prepare for expect the best, prepare for the worst. There's nothing wrong with that. And that means having some responsibility over your personal spending, having some control over what you can and what you need rather than opposed to what you want. I was really hoping COVID was going to reset people and say,
Mhm.
shit, I don't really need anything. I need a family, a couple loved ones, a good friend, a cocktail if you drink, or a mocktail if you don't, and good conversation and a pizza. Like, you don't need much. And that lasted for 13 seconds. And then it was private jets and islands and all this bullshit and people just showing off. So maybe what's coming is going to really shake people up to understand you don't need much. Stop spending. Stop trying to keep up with people. Control what you can control. If you have a business, be smart about your business. It's a shame the first thing people think to do is fire people when there's a little bit of a setback. And I guess that's a knee-jerk reaction. But there's other things you can do to prepare rather than waiting till that time and then because you didn't prepare you're going to start firing people. Like, there's things you can do now to be very smart about your spending, your profit margins. Forget tariffs. There's always a solution. I don't understand why that's all of a sudden that's going to just flip everything upside down. If that's the problem, then restructure your business model. Don't get involved into that model. Look for alternative ways to build your product or to make a new version of your product under suppliers or vendors or components that you can control. It's just, to me, it's easy because you're not dealing with terminal cancer. It's easy to find a solution. You can figure it out.
I love it. I say in our industry all the time, like nobody, a bad day if I'm a heart surgeon is somebody dies on the table. A bad day in my world is I run out of green beans, like
That's a great day. You
those
sold out 86 green beans. I love it.
exactly. So you gotta keep it in perspective, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I love you talked about controlling what you can control, and that's something we talk about a lot on our podcast. And so I tell people I use baseball analogies a lot because like we talked about, since I was three
Yeah.
years old, if you asked me what I was going to be when I grew up, I was going to be a professional baseball player, plain and
Wow.
simple.
Love
And
it.
so I was a pretty good hitter, but I threw the ball really hard, so I never got the chance to be a position player because I was a pitcher because I threw hard enough that I didn't have a choice. But I told people the reason I'm a good hitter is because I don't swing at pitches in the dirt. Because I'm
Yeah.
not Tony Gwynn. I'm not good enough to hit pitches in the dirt. So I wait until I get a pitch and then I'm ready and I put a really good swing on it. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. But that's why I'm a good hitter. You're not going to get me to swing at shit.
Yeah.
And it's very similar in terms of control what you can control. I can't control how hard the guy throws. I can't control if they want to intentionally walk me. I can't control if he bounces four curveballs when I'm at the plate, but I
Yeah.
can control being ready for a pitch that's in my zone so I
Yeah.
can hit it. So, with all of the diverse holdings that you have and all of the different people you work with, what are some techniques you use to preach that or teach that to the people you work with?
So a lot of it is good communication, right? And a lot of it is understanding. My company motto since the beginning is time is our most precious commodity, and that accident even enhanced that even further for me. So it's so important for me to have the right people around me. So money is the byproduct of good people doing good work. At least that's in my world. So I'm not focused on I will sacrifice my beliefs and work with this person because we're going to make a lot of money. So if you're wired like that, you're going to have a lot of problems. You're going to have a lot of stress. You're going to have a lot of grief because you're not filtering the right people around your energy, right? Or your vibration. Like I need to align with somebody where there's ethics, there's integrity, there's morals, there's values, and there's empathy. I need to see empathy in everybody that I work with. So when you're aligning yourself with these type of people, which I think are the cream of the crop, you can do anything. You can achieve anything because the greed and ego and pride are parked at the door because everybody's in an even playing field, including myself. Even if you look at some hierarchy and oh, Brian's here and I'm here, no, we're all here. Don't forget the title. Forget the only thing that is a little bit different. I'm usually the guy that has all the risk, but that's okay. That's how I'm wired. I'll take all the risk because I know how to maneuver and leverage that. So we're all here, and somebody can walk in with a great idea that could be completely different than what we intended on doing that day, and we all sit and we listen to it, and we respect that person, and we respect the idea, and we think about, can we do it? Is it the right time? And then my energy gets fueled up when I see that person look like a Christmas tree all lit up because we're valuing them, we're giving them some sense of worth and some pride, and just being seen, right? If someone's just being seen and feeling their confident level goes through the roof. That's when you really can start changing things, and that's when everybody's lockstep and loaded to just let's go. I mean, that's the energy that I want, and that's the culture that I built. And it took me a long time to figure it out. I think for one piece of crap person, well, actually, I have to say for every 1,000 person I met, I meet one decent person. So it's kind of the formula. Some things get a little interesting where somebody could be absolutely awesome, and then they can meet a guy or a girl, or they can get married to a guy or a girl, and all of a sudden they're absorbing that other person's qualities and traits, and then all of a sudden you see a change, and you're like, well, that's not who I intended on being involved in this ethos. And that's where it takes sitting down, great communication, and say, listen, I've known you for X amount of years. You've always acted like this. Now you're acting like this. There's obviously some pressure or tension on you at home. This can't continue with this type of mentality. That's not the culture that we have here. I'm willing to work with you and find a middle ground. You just have to go back to like who you naturally are so I can understand where we need to be. I can't deal with somebody I don't know, right? That's not part of the equation. And I bring that up because it happens quite often where somebody new comes into the equation in a business or into an office, and it's not even an employee. It's a spouse or it's a new love interest of that employee. And all of a sudden, they're hearing that they're taken advantage of, or they're hearing because they don't get paid enough because that other person has other, needs or materialistic needs. So I only bring it up because I think it's a very common thread for CEOs and entrepreneurs. But there's a tactful way to salvage it, and then if it's not salvageable, it's not salvageable. Like I can't afford to have toxic, negative energy in this machine that I've built. We just don't. We don't appreciate it, and it's unacceptable to me. Now, everybody can have a bad day. I'm cool with that. But if it's something that's ongoing, that's going to poison everybody else, it's like you got to cut the head off the snake. I don't care if they're your best friends in high school, which I've had to eliminate from my life because our paths changed. It could be a family member. If you're the one at risk and you're trying to build something great and you have people that rely on you within a building or a corporation, or you have vendors and suppliers that rely on you, you can't let one person bring you down or take you off your path because you think it's the right thing to do.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. I love it. So I used to coach in terms of making people feel valued. So after I was done playing, I coached, and I would coach all-star teams. And you know how all-star teams are. You get everybody who was, in Little League, they were their team shortstop or their team's pitcher, their team's catcher. So the very first thing I would do when I would coach these all-star teams is I would sit everybody in the dugout and say, okay, when we're done here, I want you to go to the position that you would play if you got to choose it. And I always wound up with 8 shortstops, 5 pitchers, and 2 catchers. And I would stand at the plate and I would hammer a ball into right field. And as it was flying, I would yell, yell at the top of
Yeah.
my lungs. How important is right field now? And it would scare
Yeah.
them. It was to prove the point. It's not a punishment to play out
Yeah.
there. You're on a team and we have 9 positions and we need everybody to play the position that they're assigned to the absolute best of their ability if we're going to be successful together. And you need to check your ego. You need to
Yeah.
understand that if the team needs you in that role and you can fill that role, You need to fill it as good as you can. And it was a great way for me to get buy-in from, young, undeveloped minds. Um, in the business world, what I have found is I agree with you 100% on the communication. And I have found that if I push decision making as close to the actual task that you're making the decision about as possible, the better decisions generally get made. So, what we'll do is say, here's the parameters we have to operate in. Here's the budget. Here's the labor hours. Here's the whatever. This is what we have to work with. You are closest to it. Knowing that we have to stay in these guardrails, how would you set it up? And it almost always winds up being better than I would have set it up on my own.
Yeah.
So to your point, we push all that down to our folks and trust them to make good decisions. And then if they're not, then you either have to train, or if you train and that doesn't work, then you got to talk
Replace.
about making some hard choices, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
No, 100%.
Yep. Absolutely. So, um, how do you, is your family involved in your business at all?
Early on in the beauty company as a family business, two sisters. My dad had passed away 2 years ago in August from a form of ALS. So he started in the beauty industry in the '60s and built quite an amazing journey for him. In early 2000s, my brother and I had a pretty famous coffee house called the Inkwell in West End, New Jersey. I continued my career and left, and he ran it for the last 20 years. So right now, there's healthy separation from all that, which is good for everybody. Um, I I like to think if my path continues to hopefully do great things and there's resources there, if my family ever needs anything, which I hope they never do, like I am 100% a solution and a path for them to be part of whatever I'm building. So I'm completely open to that. But within reason, right? Because again, we're all human beings, and a family dynamic, depending on who you are. I'm the youngest of four, so naturally, that's the psychology there is off, right? So an older sibling coming to me, that's not normal. That doesn't, and I understand that. So I don't expect that to be natural, right? So, and then because we're human beings, maybe there's animosity, and not saying this is the case, but maybe you open the door to animosities or jealousies or some sort of friction, or maybe an older sibling saying, "I should have this. You're younger than me. You shouldn't have this." And maybe there's some of your listeners are experiencing that. So family dynamics, I think should. I think they should just stay in the household and be families. To be honest with you, I don't always see it being a very successful model for I don't know how husbands and wives do it. I don't know if that's what you do in your situation. I don't know how the hell they do it. Like you need to have some separation, right? How do you work all day with somebody and then go home all day with somebody? God bless the ones that do it, but that doesn't seem that does not seem fun or healthy at all. So to each their own. So I guess what I'm trying to get at, but I think there's a role and purpose for everybody in your life, and if it's your sister, they should be your sister. You love her, happy birthday on her birthday, a Christmas card, or a happy Hanukkah card, whatever your religion would be, and have great moments with them rather than create friction or animosities in a business environment, because that's hard enough. Running a business is hard enough, let alone some family dynamic involved into it.
So agree with you 100%. And it's funny because we intentionally have kept that separate. My wife and we celebrate our 32nd anniversary this August, assuming she doesn't leave me before then.
Well, be
But
careful what
knock,
you say right now.
yeah, knock on wood. Um, assuming we make it, it's 32 years, and we've intentionally kept that separate. Now,
Yeah.
she is tough and tenacious, but the other thing, I hear people say this a lot, that they married their best friend, and that's just not true. Like, my best friends are guys because I'm a guy, and they know what it's like to be a guy. And my wife's got girlfriends that are her best
Yeah.
friends because
All
they
right.
know what it's like to be a girl. And
Yeah.
so I
Simple
can't,
as that.
it really is that basic to me. But I was asking the family question just because I didn't know if you did, how you kept it separate, but you basically answered that question.
Yeah, I was born into the dynamic,
Yeah,
and it evolved into a much healthier place.
yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, let's pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about baseball. So
Yeah,
I
please.
just saw in an interview the one time that you talked about being trained as a baseball player. How long or how far did you pursue that, and what did it teach you that you still use today?
Oh, it's everything. It taught me everything. So like you, born felt to be a baseball player. I didn't even not even major leagues in my mind. I just loved the sport. I'll sandlot it until forever. Like I just love the
Totally.
sport. So I busted my ass. I trained with an incredible ex pro ball player, Marty Sobel. He was Ocean Township, New Jersey's high school coach. Fantastic guy. Trained with him every day, 365. Like it was best experiences of my life, best moments of my life. Yeah, I remember getting ground balls hit off me inside of a airplane hangar, cement floor just bouncing off my face, and best feeling in the world. Hard to see how that's gonna hop, but it takes a wicked spin. Uh, so did that. High school, he had camps too. Marty Solo had camps around the state, so I was honored to be invited in to be coaches for the camps. I loved teaching the 8-year-olds to about 14. That was the age gap. Always loved teaching the 8-year-olds because they had no bad habits you had to fix. Like it was the
For
best
sure.
best age. It's just they're awesome, awesome feeling. And then played in St. Rose High School baseball, Central Jersey Shore Catholic school I went to. And then I had a bunch of offers to go play in college. Ultimately, chose to go play St. Joe's in Philadelphia. I was there for about a week, and I said, this ain't for me. This school's not for me. I should back up a little bit because this is key to who I am. In high school, my baseball coach, um, evil, to the worst degree. Should never have been around kids. I was not affected by this, but kids have killed themselves because of this guy, and he
Oh my gosh.
was arrested. I don't need to even say his name. He's a disgusting human being, and I technically quit baseball my senior year because I reported this guy. I said this guy's no good. He should not be around kids. My school turned against me. It was a fucking fiasco of an experience, but also grateful for it because even at a young age, I've just had to deal with shit. And I learned how to get through it. I learned how to figure it out. I learned how to overcome it. And that helped me in my professional career, all these life lessons that I've been faced with. So why I reference that, I don't like to bring it up or give it any light, but I reference it because I let that guy make me give up on something that I love. And I have to think about him every time I'm faced with a challenge or something I'm thinking about. Maybe I should do a 180 on this. And I say, no, then I'm no different than I let the terrorists win, right? I'm no different than who I was at 17, allowing somebody to alter my course. If I want to alter my course, it's my terms and my decision and my choices, not somebody else's influence. So I have to be grateful for quitting the sport because it allowed me not to quit anything else going forward, which is pretty interesting. And I think that was a pivotal moment in my mind for that. Then I transferred over to Monmouth University, great school in Jersey. I was going to play ball there, but then I wound up taking over this famous coffee house, working with my brother. So in college, going to school, taking 15, 20 credits a semester, working at the late night coffee house from 6 to 3 a.m., then waking up a few hours later and going to school. So I just was nonstop school, work, school, work. So I had this bug to just build and create. And the work habit and the work ethic came from training for baseball. I think any sport when you're training like that, and it doesn't matter if it's snowing, if it's what you're out there and you're working hard because there's something that you love and you have a goal and you want to achieve the goal in a sport, it's to be better. Right? It's to be better than last season, or if you struck out the week before, it's to understand why did I strike out, what did I swing at that I shouldn't have swung at, how do I evolve from that. And then in the business world, it's the work ethic I look for in people from where I came from, but it's also now, okay, I have a team, I have coworkers or employees or partners who is the right person for the right position. So it's no different than filling the baseball field up with the right players for the right position. And if you got to swap people out because somebody's talent is better over here than here, well, that's the same thing as, okay, they're a third baseman, but they really should be a right fielder based upon what I'm seeing here. It's same person, same talent, but you're you're giving them the tools and resources and the opportunity to really excel rather than be mediocre somewhere else. So I reference the sport 100 times a day, at least.
Yeah. All right. So I couldn't agree more. I had very similar approach and thought process. So my seminal moment in baseball came when I was 11 years old and I played Little League. And so in Little League, you have one all-star team and it's typically a bunch of 12-year-olds and then a couple of 11-year-olds that are good enough. Well, I was good enough for consideration at 11, but I was a bubble guy. And my dad was one of the coaches and he went to the vote for the all-stars and I was had a friend spending the night on the night of the vote. And my friend, who was also 11, made the team and I did not. And my dad cast the deciding vote against me and then came home and told me he did it and said, I didn't think you worked hard enough. I didn't think you were committed enough. And I thought someone else should get that spot because they deserved it more than you did. And so, one of the best things that ever happened to me, by the way, of course, I was, my world was over at 11 because I didn't make the All Star team when I was 11. However, the next day, I was running. The next day, I put
Yeah,
together a weightlifting routine and I said,
yeah,
I'm going to be so good that
yeah,
I can't ever be left off. They're going to have to take me
yeah,
because I'm never going to be on the bubble again.
yeah. And
And
then, but you could have went the other way. You
that's
could have
right.
quit. That
That's right.
that's how delicate life is. Like, I'm glad you chose the stronger side and perseverance, but it's just as equally could have said, "That's it. I'll play basketball or I'll run track. I'm not doing this shit anymore." Then that's something that happens daily to kids.
Yeah, for sure. And it's that same mentality that I like you had referenced. Look, when you're in charge of stuff and the bigger the stuff, the more shit goes wrong. It's just how it is. And you have to have perseverance and figure out there's lots of people counting on you to figure out the path to prosperity, if you want to call it. Like, I agree with you 100% that the goal is secondary. If you focus on the approach, the goal is the outcome from the approach. And
Absolutely.
so that's what we talk about a lot. But it was the same in baseball. The goal wasn't, hey, get a hit. The goal was take a good at bat, right? The goal wasn't strike this guy out. The goal was throw a good pitch. Now,
Yeah,
if you throw a good pitch, the outcome is generally the guy swings and misses or he doesn't swing at all.
yeah,
Um, so take a very similar approach in the business world. And the other thing that baseball taught me, which is very useful in the business world, is baseball's a game filled with failure. So, people talk about hitting all the time. Like if you fail 7 out of 10 times, you're going to the Hall of Fame. You're making hundreds of millions of bucks. Like Juan Soto signed a $500 million contract with the Mets for essentially failing about 7.3 times out of 10 when he goes
yeah,
to the plate. So it's pretty good living. Pitching's the same way. I could throw 100 pitches perfect. If it's a 0-0 game and the 101st pitch hangs over the middle and someone yanks it out of the
homer.
yard, I
Yeah,
failed.
yeah,
Right. So it's tough. And I apply that same lesson and that same mentality in the business world. So I have found it very helpful for that. Now, you're back involved in baseball, but from an ownership perspective, aren't you?
yeah, yeah. Oh, so exciting how the universe will reward you for your passions if you stick through it long
Yeah.
enough. So, the Allreds are a family. Talk about family dynamic and family ownership in business. They own the Players League and the Old North State League. So it's a wonderful, growing league of teams, starting in the southeast, but now growing across the country. They've brought me on to be one of the only non-family members involved in the Players League, which that Players League comes from the late 1800s. So that's been revamped, and that IP and that vision is coming back to the market. I've been working with them on referencing, hey, let's be the live to the MLB, let's be the live of the PGA to MLB, and let's provide new ways of financing and earnings of these teams. Not like Savannah Banana. I mean, I guess I get the entertainment side of it, but I haven't subscribed to that. I'm very traditional in my baseball. Even when it comes to PGA, I'm very traditional. Like I want to see certain level of class. I don't know, really want to see people doing cartwheels around the green. It reminds me of Caddyshack to Jackie's Wacky World of Golf. So there's certain things I think there needs to be a level of like, okay, let's not make an ass out of the sport. But You know, we want to be entertained. People used to get eaten by lions in the Coliseum. So, um, long story long is what my goal and dream here is provide an alternative league where players can continue to play and hopefully excel and maybe even get picked up to the MLB from this league, or they have the ability to earn by being a player in this league by some of the financial mechanisms that we put in place, even applying things like tokenization to it. So, I mean, it would nothing would make me happier than if we had thousands of kids that continued to play baseball and not give up on their dreams and get behind a desk and I don't want to say hate their lives, but but be very miserable because they can no longer be part of something that they love. That's a terrible place to be.
So totally agree. And it's a great segue into one other thing that we talked about in our first conversation. And that is, look, so I have three sons. So clearly uh, I don't know if it's slanted. I know what it's like to raise boys. Let's just say that I didn't have any daughters. I did grow up with three sisters. And I always tell people it's the best management training I ever got was growing up with three sisters, by far the best management training I ever got. But in today's society, it feels like there's a lot of boys that are trying to learn to be men without like a good path or a good role model in their everyday life
Sure.
um, uh, to show them the way. And I was one and I raised three of them. So I can tell you that there's no dumber life form on the face of the earth than a teenage boy. So after after they go through puberty and their bodies grow, but their brains don't, you kind of, conversations turn into a series of monosyllabic grunts back at you when you ask questions. There's not a lot of deep thought going on there. And then if you hang out long enough, they come out the other side okay. But there's a lot of stuff going on
Yeah.
in that period in between there. And, one of the reasons I am so excited about having a guy like you on here is you followed that path and you're so willing to talk about things that didn't go well and
Yeah.
challenges that you did face. Now you overcame those challenges. So, very long-winded soliloquy from me there to kind of introduce that question. What would you say to young men that are wherever they're at in their journey, but what do they need to do to be successful? Like how do they make it in the world today?
I would say immediately stop equating success to money. I think that's got to be the first thing out the gate. And in today's world, I'm very sympathetic towards people that live in the Instagram world that grew up in that, where you're just shown these highlight reels, right, of people's glorious lives. You don't see the crap or the negativity. You just see the fancy stuff, beautiful handbags, nice watches. Like I don't subscribe to that. So yeah, I think you have to take a back seat to that just for your own mental health and wellness and go you have to go after your passions. Like if you're not doing something with your work day, it's what's a third of your day if you just for me it's more, but you sleep for a third if you're lucky, work for a third if you're lucky, and then you have a third of maybe personal time. And that's not my life. My work life balance is way out of whack, but I choose that. I enjoy that. That's what I love to do. But if you're a young entrepreneur that wants to go out and make something, I'm addicted to you. That was me. I get that, and I love that, and do it. I'm not the guy that says, "Oh, well, you need to get a normal job," and what about your student debt? Like that's just those are roadblocks, right? Those are people putting fear into you. Like for you wanting to be an MLB player, imagine being in a household where your mom or your dad or your uncle is saying you'll never be that. You'll never be that. That's a terrible place to be. And that could be a motivator and that could make you excel and do better, but you're still going to remember people not believing in you and the people closest to you not believing in you. So, whenever I see a kid or and their family dynamic and if I'm in the room and I see a father like putting a kid down and tell him no he can't do that, I'm like, well, no, he can do that. If he wants to do that, the kid can damn well do that. And we're not in Nazi Germany. He can do whatever he wants. So I'm the advocate for the entrepreneur. I'm the advocate for the underdog that you go out there and fight and persevere. Like if I can do it as an Italian kid from New Jersey, you can do it. But don't think you need to be a billionaire to be successful. That's where everything's out of whack. Or you don't need a unicorn company to be successful. You need to understand spending habits. You need to have realistic goals and dreams, and you need to also take a moment and appreciate these little milestone moments. Like you, if you want to go and be an entrepreneur and you go and get an LLC, even though that takes a second online and maybe $100 depending on what state you're in, that's a milestone moment, and you should feel so proud about that. That should be celebrated. And then the next milestone moment is, people used to hang $1 behind a register. Remember those days? Their first dollar that would come in. You don't
I
see that
do,
shit anymore.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's because people had pride. That's because people were like there was a sense of like I did it, and this store is mine, this inventory is mine, and this was the first dollar that I hit this push button Casio register on. Like you need to go back to some simpler times to understand that you're not insignificant because you saw online somebody that appears to be significant. Like those people that are out there boasting, and I'm sorry if you're one of them listening, that's a joke behavior. That's very immature, insecure, abusive, obnoxious behavior. If you want to boast and you want to, then boast about helping people. Like put a giant post up that you donated to St. Jude and you gave them $100,000. That I'm on board for, not your new Rolex, not you boarding a private plane, not you showing off your trophy wife. Like that's that's idiotic to me. But what's unfortunate is young minds, like you mentioned with your boys, because they're still evolving and their brains are still evolving, they're absorbing that and they're thinking that that equates to success. No, be kind to people, be good to people, over tip a waiter or waitress. That's a successful person for me. And you may have successes in life that may not just be resulting into your bank account. You may have been rewarded with great health. You may be rewarded with a great family. You may be rewarded with a great kid or kids. You may be rewarded with really important blessings that are not just materialistic or associated with money. So, and as an entrepreneur, this sounds a little, I guess against the grain because everybody's just talking about money, valuations, this, that, and that. But that's not living. There's a balance there. You need money to survive. You need to pay your bills. You need to pay your employees. You need to pay X, Y, and Z. But that shouldn't define your success, and that shouldn't be an indicator of how successful that you actually are. So you just need to boil it down to you need to enjoy those milestone moments and not be caught up in the bullshit. Because once you do that, I think that's part of the modern day selling your soul. I think that's what happens. And then you're just on this path to you're just only motivated and you're only feeling this short slot machine emotion high when you have a financial win. Like that's wrong to me. That's just not the way we're supposed to be living on this planet.
Well said. Absolutely love it. So, to back up all the points you just made, we say a lot on this channel. 100 years from now, we're all going to be dead. Everyone that knows you is going to be gone. Someone else will own all of your stuff.
Yeah.
Very few people will know you ever existed, and the ones that do will know almost nothing about you. And if you don't believe me, then look at the Queen of England. She was the Queen of England for 60 plus years. She amassed billions of dollars of fortune. When did she die? Does anyone remember? Like she's been gone for less than 5 years, and almost nobody thinks about her ever again. So, if you want to talk about a consequential life that illustrates that point, that's the one that I point to. Like literally worldwide, everyone knew the Queen of England. Now she's gone, and nobody gives a shit.
It's
Like
true.
literally nobody gives a shit. So, if you're worried about failing, if you're worried about looking stupid, I'll break the tension for you. You're going to look stupid a lot. I'll help you out.
Mhm.
You're going to fail. You're going to look stupid. You're going to be embarrassed. It's going to happen because it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
Successful people have what I call like Rocky syndrome. Like in round 14, when he gets knocked down and the whole stadium's like, stay down, stay down. And he claws his way back up and Apollo turns around and is like, Jesus, I can't kill this guy.
Yeah.
That's the stick to itiveness that you got to have if you want to be successful in life. And that's kind of what we try to teach on this channel is teach people to think that way and then take action. Because thinking that way is one thing, but actually taking the action is another. That's why we love having a guy like you on because you've consistently taken action over a long period of time
Yeah.
and look where it's led you to, right? So
it's been a journey. I would say to a young entrepreneur too is you're not alone with that struggle, right? That hardship. More money doesn't mean less problems. It's quite the reverse. And I had to build what I've built really alone, um, which is okay. So I think it's really important that if you want to go into building something for yourself, or you want to go into launching something new or building a product. By the way, it's the best time to do that. Anybody can be an entrepreneur today. You can go and create something online, and you can be in business in seconds. It's a phenomenal time to actually start making your mark. But I would strongly suggest looking on places like LinkedIn and finding people that maybe you admire, or you really appreciate how they communicate. You love what they're doing in the world, and ask for help. I think that's the strongest people in the world. Ask for help. And if you were to find someone that you align with and be courteous in your communication with them and try to get a response from them and say, hey, listen, I'm doing this. I'd love to have an hour of your time or 10 minutes of your time over the next month. I would really love to show you what I'm doing. And maybe there's times where you can help me or make an introduction for me. When you do it right and you build a relationship and you nurture a relationship, people will help you. But you have to understand the approach, right? You can't just go out and say, hey, I want $1 million on my product's going to be the next best thing from since sliced bread. And nobody's going to respond to that. Or it's a War and Peace novel message that, like, what am I reading? Or and then there's an attachment with a huge deck. I'm like, that not happening. You didn't even ask me how I was. You didn't even say, hey, Brian, how are you? Like, people need to work on their. There's another dying breed. There's no etiquette anymore in building a relationship. It's I want this and I deserve this. I'm entitled to this and you have it and you should give it to me. Like that. No, never subscribing to that. That's not how it works in my world, and that shouldn't be how it works in your world, because you're never going to appreciate anything, and you're never going to really build something. So I think you should definitely ask for help. Get one ally out there in the world that believes in you, that you build a bond and a friendship with, and that really starts the machine, right? That starts the momentum behind you. When you have one person that believes in you, then you're winning. Then it's two, then it's four, then it's eight, and all of a sudden you have this really good momentum behind you.
Absolutely love it. And love you talking about the approach as well, because I see that a lot where people will approach us and the first thing they do is, how can you, Joe, help me? Wrong. Like, that is the absolute wrong approach. When you want to be successful, you're going to learn to focus on other people, and you're going to learn to
Yeah.
focus on them and how you can help them. And it's got a multiplier effect on everything. So, like, even when I call, I'm crazy. I'm 53, so I'll still actually pick up the phone and call people. I don't have to text them.
I was just
I
gonna
don't
say
have to
that. Yeah,
email
I was
them.
just gonna say,
I'll
yeah,
call them, or shock, I'll stand in front of them and have a
yeah,
conversation with them face to face. But when I do call someone, the very first question I ask, and it's without fail, did I catch you at a good time, or do we need to talk later?
yeah,
Because I want them to have the opportunity to say, look, this isn't a good time. Or they might have something pressing on their mind. I can't tell you how many times I've called someone and they've said, hey, look, I got a problem and you're a pretty good problem solver. Can we talk through this? You bet.
yeah,
Let's go right
yeah,
now.
yeah,
But you leave that open if the first question isn't, hey, can you give me a check? Like,
yeah. Always.
it's
Yeah.
shocking to me how many people
La
do
la
that.
Last week, I know when I'm being used. It's kind of funny. So last week, it was even a colleague was dancing around. Like they didn't really care to call to care to see how I am or what's going on. That was all bullshit fluff. And then there was like, oh, by the way, aren't you close with blah blah blah? And if you look at kind of the work that I do, I think there's some pretty amazing people that I'm honored to work with. So one of them is pretty substantial and iconic, and he's a teammate on my public company. And the guy's like, hey, can you introduce me to blah blah blah? And I'm like, no, why? And then the guy's like, well, I need X, Y, and Z. I'm like, okay, but no. I mean, I'm not part of what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing. You're not going to jeopardize my relationship because you just want to use me to whatever you're planning on doing. And he's like, well, that's not. And then he got all defensive. That's not nice. I'm like, I don't care if it's not nice. I said, here, I have an idea for you. It's a very simple solution. Do what I did. Wait in the guy's fucking lobby, like I did years ago, and wait for him to come out of his office so I can introduce myself and we can and build the relationship. I said, how's that for an idea? Go find out where he works and sit there and wait and bump into him and have a conversation. Best way to talk to somebody. and I'm probably never gonna hear from this person again. But that's fine because I there's nothing worse in the world than feeling taken advantage of and used. But there's nothing better in the world than calling somebody out about when they're doing that and putting it to bed. So it was quite an emotional roller coaster ride.
It's crazy. I've actually lost friends before. I worked at a company and was fairly high up and they wanted a job there. And like, just because I'm your friend doesn't mean I'd be in business with you. Like, those are two
Yeah,
entirely separate things. You might be a great guy to hang out with, but you could be a train wreck professionally and vice versa. Like, someone could be really good professionally and be a train wreck to hang out with. So, like, I know how to keep those things separate, but I had multiple people, hey, can you get me an interview? And I'm like, no. Like, well, I know you can. I said, well, can and will are two different things. Could I?
yeah,
Yes. Will I? No. I
good
am
for you.
not putting my name on you. Like, here's
Good for
why.
you.
By the
Yeah,
way,
good for you.
great guy. Like, if you want to hang out, give me a shout. No problem.
Good for you. I love that
Yeah.
story. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's, look, it is
that's
what,
part of that's part of being a man, and not to be men or women. But part of being a man is holding true to your convictions and not being taken advantage of. And there's a respectful way to do it, and then there's what, back off right now, back off because I can't get my time back, and you're just there's no value that you're providing back to me. You just want to use me and abuse me, and then when you ruin that relationship or that situation, you're not going to care. You don't care about me, like and if it implodes, I'm the collateral damage. No, no, no. I've been there, done that. Not happening again.
yeah, absolutely. For sure. So you had talked about you're now, uh, running a publicly traded company. How different is that experience than all your previous adventures, which were private? I assume they were privately held. At least I
Mhm.
think they were.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in some advisory roles and some unique situations with public companies in my history. But now being a CEO and principal in DLMI, stuff that I do anyway as far as ethics and integrity and compliance, like that's there's no difference there. But now
Yeah,
it's full disclosures and a hell of a lot more expenses on legal and accounting and getting filings done and quarterlies done. So it's been a great experience. We've created a lot of value for our shareholders. I think we're building something very special. We're working our asses off doing that. And we've been called the Berkshire Hathaway of tokenization on this journey, which is quite a compliment.
for
And
sure.
and yeah, it's been interesting. I don't what I don't like about it, which is okay. It's just that's just part of the deal. When they're the private companies or partnerships or holdings, you can move on the drop of a dime and pivot and we could do that in the public company. But as far as filings and regulations and compliance, like there's more uh, processes. We'll put it that way. So I don't like to be slowed down, which isn't it really isn't slowing down that crazy. But I'm not. That's something that takes some getting used to. Is that okay? I want to go and do that. Okay, we can go and do that, but we got to follow this form. We got to follow this form. We got to follow this form. We got to disclose this. We got to disclose that. I'm like, all right, I get it. Do that. Then can I go? Can I go and do it? So that's the only difference. Everything else is in line with my ethics. I love. There's nothing cooler than seeing immediate value, and let's just say, for example, in a share price on your decisions, whether they're good or bad. What a way to have a grade on your work, right? By seeing how it performs in the market. So that's if you're a good leader and you can withstand a lot of stuff and you can bring value, you can create opportunities, it's great. If you're a bad leader and you make some bad moves and you don't do the right thing, not so great. But what a great indicator in real time how the market thinks you're doing and how you as a brand are doing, right? Because even today with like Tesla reporting earnings that weren't so great, but their leader is a celebrity, so people are pricing, I believe, that company up based upon the celebrity more than the business, and the multiplier isn't in line with their industry. So just an interesting time to be around and understand what is the real value of something and how is it being perceived in the market, which is pretty interesting.
For sure. Yeah. Well, you'd referenced Berkshire Hathaway, and that is quite a comparison for your company to be called the Berkshire Hathaway of tokenization. So that's high praise for sure.
That was a great
Warren
that was a
Buffett.
great comment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Warren Buffett has talked about, I can't control macroeconomics. I can't control tariffs. I don't really pay any attention to those things. What I do is I look for companies that are worth a buck that someone's selling for 40 cents and I buy them and hold on to them for a
Yep.
long time. Like it's real basic. And look, he's proven pretty prescient over the last 70 years that he's been doing it. So good for him.
Yeah.
But there's been a several kind of ground change or shifting technologies that really kind of changed the world. Personal computing is one of them. So, like, I'm not going to go all the way back to the Industrial Revolution, but personal computing, then the internet. Do you
hmm
feel like tokenization and or blockchain is another one of those technologies that has that potential to shift the world like that?
I think it's bigger than anything we've ever seen. Once it fully rolls out and people fully understand the capabilities, because you're giving the chance for anybody to buy into something that they never had a chance to buy into before. So, with the right opportunities, the right assets, the right team behind putting a token offering out in the market, you can create wealth enhancements and wealth preservations for humanity, opposed to just people that have a good Charles Schwab or Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs account. Typically, those are the people that were blessed with an IPO of a company to help them make more money because they do a lot of transactions and they have a good account in those brokerage firms. But now anybody can buy into something. So when you look at billions of people buying into something opposed to hundreds of thousands or millions of people being blessed to buy into something, the scales are shifting. So, and also you create sense of pride. So in the past, man felt sense of pride when he put his flag in the sand and he owned a piece of land. Well, that's not really feasible in the markets and what land costs and what people make anymore worldwide. But fractional ownership of that piece of land or that building, now a man can once again feel a sense of pride because he owns, or she, I'm not saying he, but it's always been in my world, it's been the man that put the flags in the sand.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
with you.
they could say I own one hundred thousandths of that building in New York City, and something they could never have said before, and that's pretty badass. So when you apply that to all different types of industry, all different types of real world assets that have a token attached to them, you give people the ability to create wealth, to create earnings, and a very strong sense of pride, which then I believe that creates movements, positive movements.
Wow, super interesting. And I know enough about blockchain to be dangerous. I'm certainly no expert, but I look at all of the applications. So the real estate, for example, right? The real estate industry is archaic in the way that it operates. And if you're able to move transactions into blockchain, think about how much better that
Yeah,
whole operation would be under a blockchain environment or
yeah,
medicine, right? So I could go if I'm in Topeka, Kansas, and I have someone from Miami that's visiting and they come to the hospital, I'd be able to see everything about them
yeah.
via blockchain instead of this archaic system that we have set up now. So, um, how do you, in relation to that, one of the challenges you always have is overcoming the inertia of the machine that's in place that you're disrupting, right? So do you experience much of that right now? And if so, how do you kind of attack it?
No, see, we're not disrupting anything. That's the other
Mm,
the other psychological strategy that I've instilled here in my own work and also here. We're just bringing this in as another component of the business model. So we're going to use all traditional means to build a company, whether that's debt, equity, lines of credit, credit cards, cash flow, earnings. Oh, and by the way, we have tokenization. It's just another piece of the business model. So it's not, oh, we're just doing tokenization and nothing else. I think that's been a miss with companies and some adoption. Nobody knows when things get fully adopted. I mean, people were scared shit to buy a stock on the internet in the early 2000s. It took them time to trust that system and to trust that process, and they wanted to call their broker. They had what they were familiar with. So we're experiencing that now again with tokenization and crypto and digital assets. So there's going to be a educational gap. There's going to be a slow adoption rate. That's why the stocks like ours, like the LMI or other public companies that are in the space, it's an easy way to say, yeah, I'm in tokenization. I own this company in my portfolio, rather than actually owning the token. You own the equity of the company. So I'm being very careful how we go about educating people and people understanding our model, because I think our model is really the future model of public companies, where you have this tokenization element built into your business model.
Interesting, super interesting. And so blockchain is what I know about. I know nothing about tokenization. So it's super interesting to hear you talk about it that way. I get the concept, but look, big deal. You get the concept. That's not going to get it done, right? So, but it's super interesting to hear you talk about it that way.
Thank you, sir.
So, wrapping up here, is there anything that we haven't covered or we haven't talked about that you feel like is important or you want to share with our listeners, or any topics that we haven't covered you want to talk through?
I think it's a hell of a conversation. I think there's some nuggets in here for your listeners. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. And if anybody ever wants to connect with me or reach out to me, it's Brian J. Esposito on all socials. And love LinkedIn and X, so you can find me really active there. And shoot me a note if you like what I had to say, or if you have any questions or anything. I think it's a really great place of strength when people reach out to people and try to connect with them.
Love it. And so for the listeners, just to back up what Brian just said, we will include his LinkedIn profile and his company website in the notes for the show, so that if you want to learn more about Brian or reach out to him, you're able to do it. But Brian, thank you so much for joining the program. I loved our conversation. I agree with you 100% that I think there's a lot of nuggets in here. And I would just encourage people to focus on the talk about, hey, when things don't go right, here's what you've got to do to kind of fight through it, because that's life. And if you're expecting to hold hands and skip down the primrose path, you're sorely mistaken for how life works. And you've got a great example here of someone who's fought through adversity and become very successful, not just from a financial perspective, but from a quality of life perspective and making the world a better place perspective. And I would argue that's more important than the financial success that Brian has achieved. And I think he would agree with us when we say that. So love having you on, Brian. Would love to have a follow-up somewhere down the road. So we won't be strangers. We'll stay in touch, and would love to have you back on as you continue to build and see where it takes you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks, Brian. All right, guys. So, wow, what a conversation with Brian there. So I agree with him at the end where he says, there's a lot of nuggets to be found there. So we were fortunate to have someone of Brian's caliber to join us, talked a lot about his mindset, talked a lot about pushing through challenges, including a very serious car accident that really kind of opened his eyes to where his business was and where he wanted to take it, and created a lot of both challenges and opportunities for him, which is important because, as we all know, we talk about it on this podcast a lot. When things go wrong or differently than we want them to, that's an inflection point, and you can either choose to quit or you can choose to fight through it. And Brian is like a shining example of what happens when you take the path of fighting through it and continue to focus on what you have control over and being successful. So much thanks to Brian for joining us. Like we said at the end, we'll follow up with him and have him back on the podcast at some point in the future. James puts it up over here every day. Don't forget to head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are available there. We've got links to all of our social media accounts there. We also have a newsletter that we publish every weekday that you can subscribe to there. And please, please, please like, comment, subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you consume it on. It's super helpful for us. Thanks again to Brian for spending the time with us today. Great conversation, a bunch of nuggets there. Hope you found as much value in it as we did, and we will see you on the next episode.